The thing that's always been most exciting for me about the Woods Institute is the culture. People from very diverse backgrounds were enthusiastic and dedicated to committing to solutions to environmental problems. They were also deeply respectful of each other, recognizing that their own skill sets didn't address all the dimensions of the problems that needed to be solved, and deeply enthusiastic about developing the kinds of collaborations that could lead to next generations of research.
The environmental problems, which is the emphasis of the Institute, are so multifaceted, and they're not only scientific and technical, they are also social, economical, political.
Over these 20 years now, we've been, advancing with many other types of partners, right in the heart of human development, of industry, financial sector, and other arenas, transforming bit by bit.
Stanford had and still has fantastic individual scientists in biology, in earth sciences, in engineering, in law, all over the university, really. And we've been known for that for a long time. Early on in the 2000s was the recognition that we needed a structure, an institutional structure that would help us come together. And so the Institute for the Environment was created and very soon became the Woods Institute for the Environment.
We had a name, we had a trailer.
The cottage. And a billet.
And a billet that we were told that we could fill that billet, but then we had to go out and raise the money for the billet.
I was joined at the hip with the leaders of the Woods Institute. So much so that people always refer to us as PB&J, Pam, Buzz, and Jeff, because we worked so much together. We partnered to try to build the community.
I never understood Jeff when I first met him, because not only was he speaking in South African, but in addition to that, he was talking in engineering speak.
Yeah, we had this environmental seminar every second Thursday that everybody would come to. That seminar, more than anything, taught us the value of really speaking to one another and not across one another, to develop a common vernacular, if you will, regarding the environment.
One of the best things about that new gathering of people was that it was so much fun. People were energized to be working together. It was incredible. Many of us would say it's the most fun thing we ever did in our academic lives. But there were challenges too.
We were determined at Woods to A, build a community, and B, get people focused to do new, not incremental, new interdisciplinary research focused on solutions. And how were we going to do that? By creating this seed funding program called the Environmental Ventures Project.
I knew instantly, it was going to be a success. It's like, wow, check out these proposals. Like 90% of the proposals came in were just wild ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. It's just people came together and said, what can we do that's really new and different?
We found that there were a lot of the environmental venture projects that got stuck in the middle.
Right.
The people knew how to come up with technology that worked and that people would express interest in, but they then had no idea how to actually push it out there into adoption.
Exactly right. You need something in between to be able to prove its value and its worth, right? Which led us to create Realizing Environmental Innovation Program, REIP, as a result, sort of bridging that gap between the bench and full-scale adoption. John Hennessy made the announcement, we're going to build the first of this new quad, and it's going to be a building focused on the environment. And he asked Pam Matson and myself and Greg Dearline and Dick Luthi in Civil and Environmental Engineering to essentially serve as the faculty committee who would work with the architects and the planners to develop this building that we're sitting in right now, the Yang and Yamazaki Environment and Energy Building. We were determined to build a building that would really represent what we were trying to achieve, and that is a more sustainable world, and a building that would use 50% less energy and 90% less potable water. And by God, we pretty much got there.
Through my career, I've really focused on plants and ecosystems, both as impacted by climate change and as modulators of the future trajectory of the planet. I was in another organization on campus trying to build the infrastructure for global ecology. And so when it became time for Buzz and Jeff to step down and a new leader to come in, I was really enthusiastic about the Institute, and I'd already thought about it and its agenda a lot.
People typically talk about, oh, I do this because this is in my DNA. I would say in this connection, the Woods Institute has many of the genes that are so critical for the genome, for the whole genome of the new school of sustainability.
We proved that solution-oriented research and training and educating leaders is really a viable thing and something that is important. And that's what the Doerr School is about.
When we started out in the Woods Institute, we had a number of themes. We were working on water resources, we were working on food resources, we had a climate focus. I think in those days, they were more or less independent from each other. What we've learned very, very clearly in the last 20 years is they're all interconnected. We need a systems view, and we also are increasingly building strengths in more of the social science areas that we absolutely need to have in order to address complex systems problems.
Many of our biggest successes have come from creating trusting environments where we can have the challenging conversations about where there really are shared interests and where there are irreconcilable differences.
The Woods Institute played a really key role in enabling us to legitimize and build up this engine, not only for research innovation, but for impact out in the world.
In particular, when I think of some of the various programs that came out of the Woods Institute. So if you look at the Natural Capital Project and what it is doing around the world today. If you look at what the Center for Food Security and the Environment has been able to accomplish in actually improving agricultural techniques and food policy. If you look at some of the things that we've accomplished in the water field, whether it's more sustainable management of groundwater or more recycling, we've come a long ways. But certainly in terms of the most important problem on the planet, which is climate change, we still have a long ways to go, and that's why the Woods Institute for the Environment is as relevant and as important today as it was 20 years ago.
I think that the Woods Institute, by operating as a hub, as a magnet to me, rather than a hub, because something that pulls you into it, that to me is an incredible value of the institution.
It really has been the privilege of my life to be able to help steer the directions of the Institute. And I also am deeply excited about the opportunities before us.
I feel a great deal of joy. I feel so happy to be part of such an incredibly intellectually diverse, disciplinarily diverse, and increasingly diverse in other ways community of faculty, staff, and students who really care about the world, really want their knowledge, their research to contribute.
You know, it's hard to think about problems as pervasive as climate change or loss of biodiversity without being somewhat depressed. But I find it hard to think about a group that I would rather be working with and about which I'm more optimistic than the community that makes up the Stanford Woods Institute.